So the legacy of apartheid's last president, FW de Klerk, has been the subject of much talk since the news of his passing broke just yesterday. De Klerk spending 40 years of his political career in a political party that spent much of its own existence defending apartheid, while de Klerk paved the way for constitutional democratic dispensation in our country. His legacy this morning, the day after his death, does remain quite complicated. Now, the Afrikanerbond says at the very least he deserves respect for having made the right decision for the country. For more now, we're joined in studio this morning by the Afrikanerbond's Chief Secretary, that's Jan Bosman. Jan, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Michelle. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming into studio. The day after FW de Klerk's death, what do you make of some of the criticism being leveled against his legacy?
I saw some of the comments on social media, and I think it's a bit unfair. We need to take the context of the time of FW de Klerk. We issued a statement yesterday, and if I'm allowed to do so, I would also convey our sincere condolences to Elita and his two children, and also his grandchildren, the many colleagues and friends that he have. I think FW de Klerk, knowing him also on a personal level for many years now, I think he's also very misunderstood. Some very unfair remarks are made towards him. People don't know him like many people do. And I think it's unfair at this stage, also in time of death, to be so harsh and so critical. Respect the man for what he was, what he did, and also as an Afrikaner, and that's the reason why I'm speaking here this morning. We also need to acknowledge the huge role he played in taking so many Afrikaners with him on the road he embarked on the 2nd of February 1990.
A lot of the criticism being leveled against the legacy of FW de Klerk this morning is his failure to acknowledge apartheid as a crime against humanity. As the Afrikanerbond, do you acknowledge that apartheid was a crime against humanity?
Well, of course, I think there's no reason or no way that you can defend apartheid in one way or another. So that said, I was with FW de Klerk when I was working with the National Party on 2 occasions when he made his representations to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, on many public platforms where he said it, and then also this very, very tragic video of his, on the door of death, he made the last apology. And I watched the full video last night again, and knowing FW de Klerk the way we did, I must say, I think he was also very sincere yesterday in this video, and I think it's also something that we should remember him by, that he was prepared and able to do a video like this.
The decision to release that video posthumously, what do you make of that decision? Because as you say now, for you, and perhaps you are biased one way towards the legacy of FW de Klerk, to you it feels like a sincere apology. To the people who were impacted and continue to be impacted by apartheid, for them, and we've spoken to a number of them on this channel, it does feel like too little too late. And it does feel like a cop-out that he released, or his foundation chose to release the video after his death. So we didn't have a chance to talk to him about it, to interrogate him about his past comments, where he said, effectively, he wouldn't say apartheid was a genocide.
I cannot speak on behalf of the FW de Klerk Foundation, the reasons why they released the video yesterday. I cannot speak for them or also give an opinion on the content of the video or even the way it was released. I watched the video. It formed something in my mind which I thought he already said in the past. As I said to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, he apologized, but he was also a man with a legal background, and I think he also apologized with the legal background in mind. And he did not always say things the way people wanted him to say things, and some people didn't want to hear which they needed to hear at that stage. So I don't think it's the first apology he made. He made it various times in the past. And also for that reason, I think we should honor him.
Jan, one of the other criticism that's being leveled against a number of people, not only yourselves as the Afrikanerbond, but against President Cyril Ramaphosa, for an example, in his response to the death of FW de Klerk yesterday, where he again, talked about the fact that he was a key figure in the dismantling of apartheid. I mean, history will remember that there was very little choice at the time in terms of room to maneuver. South Africa was being isolated. There was the risk of a violent overthrow of the apartheid government. So it wasn't a magnanimous decision to get into those talks and to end apartheid. So missed opportunities on many scores. On the role of FW de Klerk, on the part of FW de Klerk, a missed opportunity to have this discussion when he was alive. A missed opportunity, some would argue, by the president yesterday, to not give any critical context to the legacy of apartheid. I've got your media release here as the Afrikanerbond as well. And it's understandable that you'd want to remember him in the way that you've put it in your media release. Has this also been a missed opportunity for you to reflect on some of the gaps in his legacy as apartheid's last president?
We will remember him for various things, and I don't think it's true to say that he had no choice in 1990. I think I was part of many discussions afterwards and also did some studies and also wrote some articles about it, in which I took the 1980s, the late 1980s, and South Africa would have probably gone on for a couple of more years. Struggling, with the internal strife in South Africa, struggling with the economic sanctions we had. The military power was there, everything was there. South Africa would have survived for a couple of years more. So FW de Klerk, he became president in 1989. He made these huge announcements in 1990, which caught the whole of South Africa by surprise. And the main thing that I want to remember him for is that he succeeded in taking the majority of Afrikaners with him on the road to reform when he started with this process. You must also remember that it was a huge risk for him to have a referendum for the white community in March 1992, to get support from the white community in South Africa for the reforms he started. And he won that by a landslide. He announced the referendum a day after he lost, or the National Party lost the by-election in Potchefstroom. I was there, I remember it. And I remember driving on the way back to Johannesburg that day after the election in Potchefstroom, and the radio announcement came that FW de Klerk just made an announcement for a referendum for the white community. And I thought, how irresponsible was that the day after we lost in Potchefstroom to have a referendum? And that I also think showed how strategic he thought, also taking the white community with him, winning but with a margin of almost 70% in that referendum. So for us, it is the way he changed Afrikaners' mind about South Africa and taking us with him on the road of reform. And for that, we want to honor him.
Look, I understand that there's not a lot that you can speak to insofar as the mindset of FW de Klerk, perhaps in the weeks before his passing, when that video was no doubt filmed. But perhaps you'd like to comment on, some of the pain that families are facing this morning. Nomonde Kalata is one such woman. She's the wife of Fort Kalata, one of the Craddock Four. And FW de Klerk was on the brink of perhaps answering in court what his role may have been in apartheid atrocities, the murder of the Craddock Four being one of those atrocities. And that was, of course, in his role as the head of the then Security Council under the apartheid government. How do we move forward when these are still the issues that we've yet to deal with? An apology is one thing. For these families, it feels quite empty because they never got these last words with their loved ones.
I cannot speak for what happened in government or actions they took or decisions they took. I know that FW de Klerk also was not very popular amongst the military in decisions that he took. You'll remember they call it the Night of the Generals, when he fired 16 generals for the way they behaved or their actions in the military. And I think it's maybe not always the case where people know everything that happened in government. I mean, President Ramaphosa will never know what's happening in his government.
He said that at the TRC, didn't he?
He did. So I think the TRC was also maybe, and that's a personal opinion, was maybe also not looking at all the aspects before 1990, what happened exactly with every military action, either from government or from political parties. And we never got the truth about, for instance, the Church Street bomb and the Alice Park bomb and bombs at Wimpies and landmines that were planted. So South Africa was at war, and I think we never got the whole truth at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But I think also the TRC did not succeed in getting the reconciliation that was required, and many of the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was never taken forward by government. So I think to hold FW de Klerk solely responsible for what happened, I think it's not fair.
He talks about in that video defending, when he was a member of parliament and then a cabinet minister, defending the separate development policy, which is what apartheid was called as well at the time. And then he also talks about, from the 80s, he began to see his views change. He says it felt like a conversion of sorts. His views on this separate development policy, this apartheid at the time. What do you make of those comments?
I think it's, if you got to know FW de Klerk maybe more intimately like I did in the 1994 election. I was the campaigns manager at that stage for the media. And we traveled across South Africa to many, many meetings in white city halls, in black townships, in colored areas. And his message was always the same. He treated people always the same, whether you are black, white, colored, does not matter. So we saw him in that way, and I think also that was a heartfelt apology that he made now in this last days of before his death. So I think he was really sincere, a man with integrity, and that was something that he wanted to do, because I also think that he felt that maybe the apologies of the past was misunderstood, and that's why he made this video.
I want to ask you just a final question as we wrap up this morning, Ian. I'm on the website of the Afrikanerbond here, and there's a South African flag there. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. I'm loosely translating from the Afrikaans that I'm able to understand. But as Afrikaners, we build the future of South Africa together.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about the future of the Afrikanerbond, because your roots are in a secret organization that existed before the Afrikanerbond was then established. What is your role in a future South Africa?
Let me take it one step back, if I may. FW de Klerk also acknowledged the role the former Afrikanerbond played in changing his minds. In the 1985, that was way before my time, the Afrikanerbond started with discussions. Our former chairperson, Professor Pieter de Lange, had discussions with Thabo Mbeki in New York. That was in 1985 already. We had documents making certain proposals about a new South Africa. That was documents that started processes in the minds of Afrikaners and also in the National Party, and which maybe, and FW de Klerk acknowledged it, that it also informed his decision. So today we're looking forward, and I want to add to what he also said in his video, that the middle-of-the-road Afrikaners, the moderate Afrikaners, must take hands with moderate South Africans, because we do not want to be on our own in this country. We cannot. So we need to take hands with each other, with other people, with other communities, other cultures, and try and get the best of each one so that we can build this country, and that's what our slogan is saying.
Jan Bosman, let me thank you for your time this morning. Thanks for coming into studio. He speaks on behalf of the Afrikanerbond, and that's as we continue to unpack the life and legacy of the last apartheid president, FW de Klerk, who died yesterday at the age of 85 after battling cancer.